Good Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com mailbag podcast on this Thursday. Brent Hubbs along with Austin Price and Rob Lewis. Glad to have you along with us. Don't forget to check out our friends at Blue Water Climate Control. Remember, you can give them a buzz at 865-299-2290 or check them out online at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com. Check out the reviews. You'll find out all the great work they've been doing for people in the area. If your air conditioning has any needs to be cleaned out, needs to be fueled up, needs a repair job, needs a new unit, whatever, they can take care of you at Blue Water Climate Control. So be sure and check them out. We thank them for their continued support at Volquest.com and of the podcast. All right, fellas. One thing before we jump into questions, I know a lot of people have been asking about this. Will there be some kind of watch party or something to that effect outside of Lindsey Nelson Stadium Saturday, Sunday, Monday in regards to the Super Regional? Made some calls late Wednesday night just to kind of see where that was. There has been some legitimate discussions about it. Nothing's been finalized. We'll see what comes of it or doesn't come of it, but it is something that has been talked about within the athletic department. I know Tony Vitello had indicated he thinks something like that's going to happen in an interview he did. He believes that because of the discussion that's been going on within the university. So we'll see what happens there in terms of if they get something lined up or doesn't. I just want to make sure everybody check the Volquest, the newsletter, the email newsletter for the information about the tickets extra tickets being released Friday. Yeah, no. Don't start that madness. There are no extra tickets. Tickets are gone, and it's obviously going to be a raucous crowd. And I'll ask this as a mailbag question. What do you guys think of Tony Vitello's kind of when asked about the LSU comments and everything else? His give a care factor seemed to be pretty low, Rob Lewis, in terms of what other people think about his program at this particular point.
Yeah, and add that in with the post game fracas with the Arkansas head coach, and you just see why fans love him. Those are two great examples. Put that together with him running into the stands the other night and high fiving and shoving people, and he's talking about holding all the cards in a negotiation with your athletic director right now. Good gracious.
AP, he's the man of the people, that's for sure.
Well, he and his team. You saw Evan Russell come out on
good point.
On Wednesday and basically embraced being the villain. That's what he said. Basically, to quote the great Razor Ramon, say hello to the bad guy, and they're really embracing that. Kind of an old school '90s wrestling heel. They're embracing being the team that everybody wants to hate on, except for the people you have in your foxhole. And everybody in this foxhole right now is hugely behind this team, hugely behind Tony Vitello, and that's why it will be a madhouse around Lindsey Nelson Stadium Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Yeah, they can't build the foxhole.
Monday.
Yeah, they can't build the foxhole big enough. That's for sure right now. All right, let's jump into questions here. First one out of the gate is a recruiting question, Austin. How close are Terrence Elder and Jeremiah Fleming from getting a UT offer?
Man, I don't know. Edler, kind of, got hurt at night at Neyland, but Tennessee again has seen him run at the state track meet, so the speed stuff's not really a factor. Now, I think Tennessee would love to have seen him compete and go against other players. I think that probably hurt him a little bit. If I'm Tennessee, I'm still slow on him. There's no reason to jump and react and kind of go overboard. I would continue to recruit him solid, but I wouldn't be pushing or anything like that. As far as the kid from East Hamilton, I thought he was dynamite, man. I'm surprised Tennessee hadn't offered, but again, he don't have a whole lot, so why rush things? And we always talk about like, well, you got to recruit different. The kids aren't just going to get in the boat when you offer in this state. He might have, Brent. He was feeling pretty good the other night, and he should have been. He camped great and looked very much the part, and did so at a position that, let's face it, he don't plays quarterback.
Yeah, he does, and that's going to be hard for him to generate a ton of buzz this fall in the evaluation if he hasn't camp places. So getting him on campus for camp was big for him and big for Tennessee. So we'll see what happens with that one moving forward. Can Tennessee baseball continue strong fan support for years to come, or is the support because fans are so desperate for a winner? Rob Lewis?
I think, short answer, yes. I think they can continue getting strong fan support. Now, if they had an Arkansas-sized stadium with 11,500, would they sell that out every weekend during SEC play? I don't know. I mean, they might come close, but this year's team, I just think it's been a perfect storm. People with COVID, people were desperate to be able to get out, attend games, have that in-person live experience. This team and this head coach are incredibly easy to root for. I mean, you love everything about it for the way, they're come from behind, never say die stuff, the dramatic way that they've won some of these games, Vitello's personality. So, I think this year was a perfect storm. I don't know if you'll see this kind of frenzied level of support year in and year out, but I would wager that if Tennessee had a 10,000 seat stadium and was a top 5 baseball program consistently, I think they'd sell that thing out for SEC games.
It's interesting, Austin. I think that's the real challenge. As Danny White made it clear, they're going to do something stadium-wise with Lindsey Nelson Stadium, and he's going to listen to Tony Vitello. He's not necessarily going to go off the renderings we've seen. One of the things he talked about in his press conference on Wednesday is finding that balance of size. And I think that is interesting because you're seeing football stadiums being downsized. Okay, Neyland Stadium is going to be smaller when you put in chairback seats in the west side. And you put in that jumbotron where they're going to put it and move some people around there and eliminate some seats. So you're seeing some venues get smaller. Yet in SEC baseball, they built kind of mega venues in baseball. So I think that is an interesting balance for Tony Vitello and Danny White as they look forward for what facilities are going to look like. Is how big's big enough without going and being too big when in terms of renovations and additions to the stadium.
Well, what can they feasibly handle? I get they can park people all over campus, but I think 7 to 8. If it's basically doubling your size, I can't see them going to 9 or 10,000. It just seems like, first of all, Lindsey Nelson, how you expand it, even if you expand it down the lines, really to grow it much more, you're going to have to go up, right? There's no really room to go out. You have streets all around it.
Yeah, I think you could I don't think that it would be a big deal to close the road running behind the frat houses. Just blow that up. How is that? Would that really be a huge deal?
I don't know.
I don't use that road. We're on campus all the time. That wouldn't affect me at all.
Yeah, you can.
I'll remember. Quick story.
When I have a student there, he doesn't use it. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, Brent. Quick story about that parking lot back there behind the center field fence. Hubs, don't you remember when Pruitt first got here? He didn't want us on campus. Okay, didn't want us on campus because that's how they did it at Alabama. Now year 2 it drastically changed. We were coming to camps, but that first year we were back there. They were dropping kids off in that gravel parking lot back there behind the right center field wall. And I told Hubs, this is a new low. I was like, I can't do it. We left. I was like, I can't do this. I can't sabotage kids at their car. I have no problem doing a public interview in the street, but that just felt different. It just did, and I'll never forget it. And luckily, it changed, and everything got better from there.
It did. We certainly jumped out, and it was bizarre jumping out. Hey, walking through a parking lot. Hey, how you doing? Can I interview you for a minute? It was a very odd thing for sure. It was. I'm with you. It was a low point in terms of following recruiting because it just startled everybody the way you did it. They would drop them off of a golf cart or drop them out of a van, and here we were sabotaged them as they got to their car, basically. But we'll see. Rob, you could close that road. You got to leave it the top half of that road open so you can get it out of the parking garage. But we'll see what that number looks like, and clearly there's going to be some renovations, and clearly I think the fans are going to support this program as long as they have fun and play and the style of baseball that Tony Vitello has had, not just this year, but really since he's been here. All right, let's.
Yeah, I think it's all about success. If you build it up and then Vitello leaves or suddenly Tennessee becomes mediocre, then it looks like Thompson Bowling Arena the way it used to.
Yep, and I think that's where you have to balance the size and why you don't want to get too big because you don't want to. And here's the other thing too, from a size standpoint. The downtown stadium I think is going to be about 9,000. So you could play a big series over there or something over there if you needed to, perhaps. But lots of discussion taking place and will take place at season's end on what that's going to look like. Back to recruiting to go. I was curious, is this staff recruiting Alcoa lineman Lance Williams? Also, are they trying to get him to visit as well as is it Carl Grubbs or Kale Grubbs?
Kale Grubbs.
Kale Grubbs. All right, AP.
Well,
Williams going to be on campus later today, right?
Yep. By the time you're listening to this, he'll be on the way from Alcoa over to campus for the O-line D-line camp. So yeah, he'll get to work with Glenn Ellerby this morning and then today at the O-line D-line camp. We'll see what happens. Tennessee is yet to offer. He's motivated and he wants to earn an offer and kind of prove Tennessee's been too slow. Now, I would argue that Lance played last year way overweight. And I think he's in way better shape now, and I expect a better Lance Williams when we see him at camp today. I really do. I expect him to really ball. Last year, and because Alcoa doesn't play a super tough schedule, outside of playing Maryville and DB and Blackman, now I didn't count Blackman. They just don't play a super tough schedule, so he could get away with being a little bit overweight. But that was because there was COVID. He had got injured and was overcoming injury, all that type of thing. He appears like he's way better and in way better shape, has lost significant amount of weight and looks really good, Brown.
Yep, and we'll see how camp goes for him and kind of where things are. He's got a bunch of other camps he's going to go to. He was at Clemson already for one camp. Look for him to be at Georgia and Alabama as well.
Grubbs, yeah, they're recruiting him. It's somebody that they're looking at. I wouldn't say it's, head over heels, but somebody they're definitely looking at.
All right. Next question. Thoughts on Walter Nolan? Will Marlon Walls join him at his high school? Got a little
AP, you got anything good here?
We got a little Walter Nolan story coming later today, right?
Yes, we will have a Walter Nolan story at noon. So we'll go ahead and tease it now. Walter Nolan did unofficially visit Tennessee last week, that being last Wednesday, and before he went to the Florida visit. And Tennessee's, quietly in there. I think there's a real good shot that he gives them an official visit at some point in the very near future. And, again, I don't want to overdo this and make you feel like that Tennessee's all of a sudden getting Walter Nolan, because I don't think that's necessarily the case, but they are way more of a factor now than they were 2 months ago. The kid admitted that to me in the story that'll run coming up around lunchtime. And, I think he's wanting to get something done by August. He went down to Florida. It was his first visit. He got emotional, was feeling the vibes. That's why the tweet happened.
The tweet that said he was putting things down, right?
Yeah, correct. Because he's just tired. He's tired of the hoopla. He's got everybody he wants to get. Like Texas A&M just offered him the other day, wants him to come for a visit now. I think he's just kind of the point, like, okay, let's focus this thing in on, 3, 4 schools, 5 schools, and put this thing to bed. And I think that's just kind of where he's at. He's not somebody that tweets a lot. He's not somebody that needs the gratification of all the offers. It's just not who he is. And, I think he's to that point where, he wants to settle things down and starts working towards a decision. And Tennessee, thanks to Rodney Garner, has slowly pulled themselves back into this thing. Again, long way to go. Tennessee's still going to have to dot a lot of I's, cross a lot of T's. But they are, again, in it where they weren't in it at all 2 months ago.
And I think there's a chance that he's playing football in East Tennessee and Marlon Walls is coaching football in East Tennessee come this fall. We'll see how that works out. But I think that's possible.
I think the playing thing is, very, very possible, or more even probable. I think Marlon coaching, that's more up in the air, in my opinion. I think it's possible. I would not call it probable. And in fact, I would probably lean, it's 50-50 at best, in my opinion.
All right. Army Clerk wants to know how Ben's initiation to Volquest is coming and wants to welcome to the general's quarters. I think Ben's doing a great job mowing Austin's lawn. He's mulched. He's done a lot of good things for Austin in addition to covering baseball. So I think Ben's working his way through basic. He's got to go to tech school with Austin, which probably includes some lighting, a little pressure washing work. But Rob, I think he's come along pretty well.
Still has to bite the head off the chicken at the end before he gets the T-shirt.
Hey, I wonder who asked this question, because if you can only see our group text, like, I don't give Kane near the hard time that I give Ben. Like Kane will get a recruit on the phone, and I'll be like, Ben, are you going to do any work today? And Ben can handle it. He gives it back to me, so it works well.
Yep, and obviously both those guys are doing great work.
Are you saying Kane couldn't handle it, AP? That's why you take it out on Ben.
I'm saying that Eric's mental psyche, I think, is more fragile than Ben.
A little softer than Ben.
All right, let's move on here. How many corners does Tennessee need to sign in 22? Austin, what corners? What 2, 3, 4? I mean, they probably as many as 5 defensive backs. That doesn't mean 5 corners.
I think they have to sign 3 corners.
Okay.
I think three's at bare minimum.
All right. How are the Vols looking with Antonio Gates Jr., and what are some linebacker and defensive back prospects that the Vols are in good shape with in the 22 class?
Well, I think they're in better shape now with Aldavian Collins. The fact he was here last week, I think that's a good thing. I think Joshua Joseph's Tennessee's in a good shape for him. Now he's more of an outside guy, and he's not really like an inside backer. Corner's a kind of a weird position because they want to be in play with Kamari Rogers. We'll see what happens there. He's been getting a lot of Miami buzz the past few days. Tennessee's trying to recruit a couple of corners from the state of Georgia, Collins being one of them. We'll see how this thing plays out. Really, I think Cody Jones was somebody that the staff had looked hard at the last 6 weeks or so. But I'm not sure, if that thing might not have just stalled out a little bit. So we'll see kind of where they are.
All right. Vol Rocker wants to know the best Tim Priest story that I've never told. Also, love it when you do your Where Are They Now articles on former Vols. Do you plan to do those in the fall? Is Johnny Jones still a police officer in Mumford? Thanks. We might revive some of the Where Are They Nows this fall. We'll see how that goes. We've done some of those, and that's always a possibility. I don't know that I've got a great Tim Priest story that I've never told. One of the things I didn't put in the column that I started to was Tim Priest we love to have a good critique of press box meals, of who had the best and were those were always fun. Notre Dame hands down had the best press box meal in Tim Priest's eyes because they had some rosemary chicken, rotisserie chicken when we went up there, and for years after that we talked about that. I think the one thing about Tim for me is he would always get to a point, and not always, but when Tennessee was rolling, he would get to a point about midway through the fourth quarter, and if it was a close game, he would have that moment in that field where he'd turn to me and he'd hit me on the arm and say, "Hey, Tennessee's going to win." And I'm like, there's a whole lot of football left to be played. And he's like, "No, Tennessee's going to win. We're good here." So Tim was fun to be around. I mentioned this, for 22 years, I got to sit beside him. Everybody's heard the clip of the Florida and the frustration he had with the interception there. For as angry as he was there, he was probably angrier in Tuscaloosa in 2005 when Tennessee lost 6-3, jumped off sides going in at first and goal there. But for those 2 anger moments, his excitement and euphoria from the Jalen Tabor call to I guess it was 0-1 when Tennessee held the ball for about 12 minutes in the fourth quarter in Tuscaloosa. And Tim being from where he was in Huntington, the Alabama game is the game for him. It's more important than the Florida game or any of the other games. That was the game. And for Tennessee and Philip Fulmer with Travis Stevens and that crew, for them to road grade Alabama in the fourth quarter the way they did, he strutted out of Bryant-Denny Stadium that afternoon, that evening. He had his chest stuck out pretty good. He was really excited with the way that his team played that day. But anyway, he was just a fun guy to be around, and certainly going to miss him on game days and miss him on road trips as well. All right, Hunter wants to know the article about Jalen Glover had this quote, "Coach Mack's message to me was that I can bring something different to the roster. I can flex out, and I'm very versatile. I could have a shot at making an early impact. They said if I come in and maintain that versatility, the coaching staff said they only have one guy on the depth chart that can do it all, and he's at the top." Hearing that was very appealing. Hunter wants to know who that one guy Coach Mack is, who he's referring to. I don't have any idea. I think I think the most versatile guy on the running back roster is Jalen Wright, but I don't think I wouldn't sit here and say he's at the top of their depth chart either.
I agree. I mean, I don't know who he's talking about. I mean, it's recruiting. I mean, like all these
Right.
coaches across
That's what I
America
would say.
sell a hope and a dream, and it is what it is. That's what all recruiting. It doesn't matter if
You're
you're
not going
recruiting
to
at
tell the kid we've
Idaho
got
or Tennessee or Alabama.
Well, I mean, it's exactly what you're either going to tell the kid we got one or none. You're not going to say we got four guys can do just what you're doing.
You'll be number 5 when you arrive. Yeah, it's not how it works. All right, Tim Ken 1985 wants to know, is the transfer portal the worst thing to happen to college football in the past 20 years? I think just having to constantly recruit your own players has and will drive good coaches out of college, make the product worse. Rob Lewis, is the transfer portal the worst thing to happen to college football in 20 years?
I mean, it's probably the worst thing for coaches, but I'm for it for players and have been strongly. I mean, these are 18, 19-year-old kids. I mean, did anybody make a decision when they were 18 that, they regret and wish wouldn't impact them for the next 3 or 4 years? I mean, I'm a freshman. The kid that just wrapped up his freshman year at UT. If he decides he wants to go to Alabama in the fall, he can go. I mean, why should another 18, 19-year-old kid not be able to make that decision just because he plays football?
Here's the deal, though. Problem is it ain't like they mature a lot between 18 and 20, so they really aren't capable of making the decision when they're 20 either. So I mean, like, I agree with you 100%. 100% agree that it's a good thing for the kids, but at the same time, the reasons that most are transferring are so misguided. That's why there's a million of them in the transfer portal that can't find a home.
But I think the SEC's addendum to putting the February 1st deadline.
Yeah, I think that helps. I think it helps
huge.
balance it out.
I mean, because they're still having to recruit kids right now this year because the deadline's July 1. I mean, I think that's big for the SEC. That you don't.
Yeah, I think it's huge. And again, I mean, I think you've gotten to the point the last few years where enough guys were winning waivers that kids weren't afraid to transfer or weren't as hesitant about transferring as they once were. So transfer numbers have been on the rise for a while. Obviously, the portal makes it easier for them to transfer. I do think at some point in time that it'll balance some things out. It really will. From the standpoint of enough kids aren't going to land at the type of schools that they're hoping for when they go into the portal. And you guys know this. I mean, recruits talk to recruits, right? And so if somebody talks to a guy who went through the process and he's like, yeah, it didn't go the way I wanted, it might create some guys to slow down that process a little bit. It'll never be like it was 30 years ago, when a small handful of people transferred. That's just not the world we live in. Okay. I mean, how many people, regular people, I shouldn't say regular people, but how many professionals, Rob, work one job for 30 years? But 25, 30 years ago, that wasn't nearly as uncommon to say the guy was a 30-year veteran of some company. These days you don't hear that much anymore. I mean, people are more willing to move around and change, things in their career even later on in life. So I think it's part of it. I don't know that it's the worst thing. It's a challenging thing for coaches. Just like name, image, likeness is going to be a challenging thing for everybody out there as well. So the landscape is changing. What the end result of that product is going to be remains to be seen. I can't sit here today and say that the transfer portal is definitely going to make the product worse. I think a lot of, or not a lot, but some good coaches, particularly assistant coaches, have left the college game, Austin, because of how you've had to recruit the last 10 years and the recruiting cycle being 365 days a year and there's no break from it. I think good coaches have found life in the NFL to go, you know what? I may stay here. It's not half bad because I don't have the stress of recruiting and I don't have the workload of recruiting that a college coach has. If you're an assistant coach and you're a good recruiter, it's literally 365 days a year without.
Yeah. If you're doing it right, it is, and especially in this league. So I'm with you. I mean, talk to a guy like Zach Azani. I mean, he loved his time at Tennessee, but he loves the NFL even more. And he's been in two franchises that do the coaching pension. And, after this fall, he'll have 5 years in the league and he'll be getting that coaching pension. So, kudos to him. Kudos to any of those guys that, can find life, which allows you to have more family time, especially when you have kids like Zach does.
Yep, he's got to spend more time with his 3 girls. I guess it's 3 girls than in the NFL life than he ever would have in the college life. That's for sure.
I don't think there's any comparison.
Yeah, there's none at all. Shannon Blair, did he miss out on getting a scholarship offer? Did he perform poorly at camp?
Didn't camp at corner. Simple as that. He sat at receiver the entire time. They asked him to flip over and play corner, and he was slow doing it. And by the time he decided to do it, the horn blew and the camp was over.
And he didn't run great either, did he?
He didn't run great. He didn't run terrible, but he didn't run great. And I think there's a chance he tries to give it another go before the end of the month. We'll see. Now, I know if he comes back, he'll be working out at corner when he comes back. I don't know why he worked out a receiver. I think that the corner is what he is. I think that's what Michigan State's recruiting him as.
They are.
And he was,
I've spoken with people around West, and Michigan State's recruiting him there, Virginia's recruiting him there, Vandy's recruiting him there.
I mean, I sit there and watched it happen, and I'm like, what's he doing? Like, it's like I get it. I mean, I think I'm 200 pounds and chiseled, but I'm not. I'm 255 pounds and fat. So I mean, you're gonna be what you are. I mean, he's a corner. So it kind of is what it is.
We'll see what happens with him the rest of this month, and we'll see how evaluations of him go this fall as well. Volgrad 05, any interesting recruiting stories from the early 2000s worth telling? Anything with guys like Swain, Meacham, Smith, etc.? Anybody want to go first? Because I'll tell the Robert Meacham story, but if you got one on top of your head, go ahead. If not,
I still remember. I just would say I would have set the Meacham story up. I remember like that super secret official visit. Tennessee he was at a basketball game, and I can remember walking on my way to a Buzz Peterson press conference and just glancing down a tunnel and seeing you and Robert Meacham.
Yep. It's the only conversation I ever had with Robert Meacham before he signed. He didn't talk in the recruiting process. He did come in for a midweek visit to Tennessee, which was a surprise. I got him at the basketball game to tell me that Tennessee was in it. Everyone thought he was going to go to Oklahoma. On signing day, I got word from somebody at Tennessee that they thought Meacham was going to sign with Tennessee, but everybody had to pull the old Hubs famous I gotta believe it to see it, or I gotta see it to believe it deal. And so what I did was about between 11 and 12, threw out on the message board. And this is why everybody asks on signing day, are there any surprises? It's the Robert Meacham rule. So I put out between 11 and 12 because Tennessee was done. And everybody said, are they done for the day? Is there anything left? I said, I think they're done, but Robert Meacham bears watching in the afternoon because he committed at like 2:00. He signed at like 2:00 his time, and he did not sign paperwork early. He signed at his press conference. It wasn't the old fake signature. It was the legit signature at his press conference. So 2:00 rolls around. Jeremy Crabtree is in Oklahoma at Roberts High School covering the press conference. I'm talking to him on Instant Messenger, and I said, watch Tennessee here. I think it's a possibility. And Crab's like, everybody says it's Oklahoma. Meacham puts on a Tennessee hat. There were boos in his high school when he picked Tennessee, and he signed with Tennessee. So the Meacham story, that's how that went. The other one is Julian Battle, who's the only guy I've ever seen to sign 2 national letters of intent on signing day. His mom just didn't sign the first one, so they could void that one out. And he signed the second one late in the afternoon, and his mom signed it down in Florida, and that's how Julian Battle ended up at Tennessee instead of NC State.
I was a freshman in college, and you were on Channel 8 the first time around with Rick Russo. And I remember that was kind of your breaking news on the TV that night, was that they had signed 2 letters of intent, and they were still trying to sort it all out.
Julian Battle.
Who was the linebacker that got stuck here because of a snowstorm for like 4 or 5 days, and Tennessee thought they were going to get him? I think he was from South Carolina, ended up going to Florida State and played for the Steelers for a long time. Was a really good NFL player. I cannot remember his name.
Oh, yes, that's exactly right. He got stuck. He could not go over the mountain.
And Tennessee thought it was going to help him.
And they did. And they ended up having like I mean, they talked to him for hours the night before signing day, and he ended up going with Florida State. And holy smokes, I will find it and I will put
I
it.
mean, he's like a Pro Bowl player.
Yeah,
I can't remember his name.
I will put his name in the post here when I figure that out after we finish this deal.
That's killing me.
I'm going to remember who that is, and when it happens, it's going to be like, oh, of course it was. But I can't remember that right off the top of my head. All right, last couple. We got to get out the gate here. What exactly does an official visit entail? Where do they eat? What do they do? It can't be all business. What do they do for fun? Speak with some academic sides. Austin, you talked about this a little bit in the podcast. Smart move by Tennessee last week to bring a small number in, because this staff is trying to gain and understand, what works and what doesn't work on official visits at Tennessee. So everybody does it different. And we'll see exactly what official visits look like for Tennessee with this staff. And having official visits in the summertime at Tennessee is different than having official visits in the wintertime. So, I mean, it's different, but it's just all paid for by the university is the bottom line with official visits.
Well, you can incorporate the outside much more this time of year than you can in December. So, like, there's going to be some form of bowling or whatever. They'll do a downtown restaurant. It used to be 5 Bar, then it was Ruth's Chris. I mean, it's different things. I'll never forget my favorite Ruth's Chris story was when Chris Morris, the offensive lineman who signed with Texas A&M, held up his steak at Ruth's Chris like Simba and said, "Oh, Sylvania." That was a peach. But yeah, I mean, it's just different. I mean, yeah, they take the tours of campus, they do the photo shoots, they hang out, they do stuff. Family. A lot of times they'll do some type of family get together with all the official visitors. That way, the moms and dads can all kind of hang out and spend time together. So, I mean, I expect that to be much the same, no matter what staff's here. I mean, you're going to have some form of kind of recreation, some form of a family type get together. That way, like next weekend when the Brewbakers and Nichols family are here, the Brewbakers and Nichols family can hang out together, and maybe their kids will want to come together, and and they can kind of strike up a friendship and a bond. So it's all about creating relationships, and that's what they're doing.
It's a lot different on the basketball side because they can spend so much more one-on-one time with the head coach and the staff, because you're not bringing in 8, 10, 12 guys every time. Lawrence Timmons, Suber.
There it is, Lawrence Timmons. Thank you. All right, I can move on now.
And I want to say real quick, the basketball side, I'd say this is some degree true of the football side as well, but the coaches can't be in the gym watching them, but when an official visitor comes in, at some point in time, they're going to play with the team. They're going to play 5-on-5. They're going to get after it. They're going to spend some time just as college kids, away from parents and coaches. And I'm sure it's like this everywhere, but it's especially true here. Like after that, the assistant coaches or the players themselves are taking initiative. They're like, "Hey, man, this kid was great. He fits in. We all liked him." And I know of multiple instances where players have gone to the coaching staff and said, "Hey, he's not like us. He won't fit in here. You need to move on." And coaches, and they listen to that.
Last 2 questions out the gate. A lot of media types say Danny White won't deal with Jimmy Sexton. Jimmy Sexton clients, do you find this to be true? The answer to that is no. That's not true. Danny White's going to hire whoever he can hire, whoever the best clients are. There were Jimmy Sexton clients on his radar screen for this past coaching search. Not many of them were interested in the job, but that's not true that Danny White will not deal with Jimmy Sexton. And the last question, AP, what does Tennessee's quarterback board look like for 2023? Is Dante Moore at the top?
I mean, I would say that, Marcel Reed's at the top. I just think that, you have a tie in state. I know he got his first taste of Knoxville this past week, but, him being 2.5 hours away, just makes sense to stay in state if you can. But hey, they're going to recruit, the best of the best at that position, and they're going to do that every year. Now they may not get them all, but they're certainly going to try.
Well, and the other thing too for that is, what do they look like this fall, and how does that change anything? Now, most of the quarterbacks are going to all be off the board, early and all that. But Rob, how they play offense this fall Does that change what quarterbacks think of Tennessee?
I said this on our last podcast, but after talking to Marcel Reed the other night, that kid is open to Tennessee. I mean, they're going to have to show him something. I mean, he's not just going to, fall in the boat because they're the in-state school, but he really liked Josh Heupel. He knew all about what South Florida or Central Florida had done, and he's waiting to see what they look like on the field in the SEC. And if he likes what he sees, I think Tennessee will be in it, like legit.
All right, that's going to do it for the mailbag edition of the Volquest.com podcast presented by our good friends at Blue Water Climate Control. Don't forget, update on Walter Nolan coming up later today. More recruiting updates. Rodney Garner's been busy offering a couple of class of 22 defensive linemen. We'll get you update on some of that as well. Plenty of recruiting stuff, plenty of baseball stuff coming up. Lots of things going on at Volquest.com. But that does it for this edition of the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com podcast with Rob Lewis and Austin Price. I'm Brett Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Thursday, everybody.